Starting off this countdown, we have the parallel wedding. This story was posted on Reddit by the user parallel_alt_girl, who went to a wedding in a parallel universe. So back in the day, she attended her aunt's wedding. The wedding was big and the theme of the wedding was dark blue, so all the bridesmaids were wearing blue dresses, and so was she. After the wedding, she took a little nap before the reception, but when she woke up, she was no longer in a blue dress. She was in a light orange one. So was everyone else. She didn't know how that was even possible. But even looking back at the wedding photos, she was photographed attending the wedding in an orange dress, along with all the other bridesmaids. So now she believes that she somehow woke up in another universe, one where everyone wore orange instead of blue to the wedding. In our 9th spot, we have the swapped selves. This story was posted on Reddit by the user someoneelse777. She believes that she swapped places with her parallel universe self. So story goes that she was out for a hike one day with her boyfriend. They were nearing the end of the hike when her boyfriend decided to climb a big rock formation. But she was too tired, so she continued to walk down the path to meet him at the other end. However, while walking, she got a bad feeling, thinking that something bad happened to her boyfriend. Then all of a sudden, she was someone else. She went from thinking, what if my boyfriend gets hurt? I should rescue him, to I came here alone, who am I rescuing? So in one universe, she was out hiking with her boyfriend. In the other, she was out hiking alone. When she switched places, she noticed that her other self was a bit different. She was a bit taller, fitter, and felt more confident. She was also carrying a tent and supplies for a solo journey. Her boyfriend was not with her. Like what? That would freak me out, just all of a sudden like, and you're someone else? But like, yourself, but then someone else? I don't know. Coming in at number 8, we have the castle. Posted on Reddit by the user John30859, he shared his experience visiting a parallel universe. But this one was actually quite magical. So story goes that John and his cousin were outside on the porch when two teenagers approached them and asked them if they wanted to see a castle. I mean, that has stranger danger written all over it. But the two boys were young and naive, so they followed them along a path in the woods. Little while later, they saw a huge, beautiful castle in the distance. They got so excited that they ran home to show their parents. But when they arrived home, his mom got mad and told them to stay inside for the rest of the night. Here's the thing, he claims that his mom is very strict. She's always checking in on them when they're playing outside, so she would have noticed if they left. On top of that, in the area he lives in, there are no castles or churches or anything else that could have been mistaken for a castle. But the boys both vividly remember seeing the castle, even now at 25 years old. So what happened? Well, other people replied to his post offering him two explanations. One is that they were taken to Fairy, basically a parallel dimension that can only be reached by doors and hills, under lakes and wells, through hedges, etc. The next is that the teenagers were actually aliens in disguise that brought them into another dimension. Either way, they somehow got transported into a world that has a giant castle. Moving on at number 7, we have the third floor. This next story was posted on Reddit by the user FeiFei775. Back in 2015, he went to the hospital to visit his dad, who was a patient there. After spending some time with him, he left with his friend to go get some snacks. So they hopped on the elevator and went to the third floor where all the food was. But when the doors opened, they found that the whole area was completely deserted. The lights were flickering and the floor was trashed. Scared, they headed on back to the 5th floor where his dad's room was. Fast forward to a week later, they are back at the hospital. And turns out that his dad was, and had always been, on the 3rd floor, which was now cleaned up and in use. So he's convinced that he somehow took an elevator to a different universe. Coming in at number 6, we have jumping universes. So this story was posted on Reddit a month ago, but the user that posted the story deleted their account. I wonder why. Maybe they ended up in a different universe. Alright, so this individual wrote that every time they wake up from a sleep, they believe that they are in a different universe. The differences in each universe are small, but still you know that something is not quite right. Some people will act differently from day to day, or a location of objects will move ever so slightly. So they believe that every day they end up in a different universe. And a lot of people commented on this post claiming that they too have had similar experiences, where they fall asleep and then wake up and they're in a different universe. My only question is, How many universes are out there? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the accident. Posted by the user UMAwake, they shared a story about the time that they were involved in an accident in one universe but not the other. So when she was younger, she was outside watching her uncle do wheelies on his four-wheeler. Eventually she hopped on to have some fun, but sadly the four-wheeler flipped. All she remembers is it getting very quiet and then waking up on the couch inside the house. She went outside to find her family helping her cousin and uncle get out from under the four-wheeler, but she vividly remembers being the one on the vehicle that flipped. Coming in at number 4, we have the breakfast place. Posted on Reddit by the user TexasKSMO, she shares a story about the time her and her husband visited a restaurant in a parallel universe. So to begin, the couple bought a little country house which they go to on the weekends. One weekend while traveling there, they decided to stop and have breakfast at a restaurant they had never seen before. They entered and a man in a cowboy hat said, "You can just suit yourself." I feel like that's what he sounded like if he had a cowboy hat on, so. They ended up having a nice meal and wanted to return a couple weeks later. However, when they went back to try and find the same restaurant, it was gone. Instead, in place of the restaurant was an old boarded up abandoned building. The building looked the same, but was completely deserted. Dun, dun, dun. I wonder how food tastes though in another universe. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. Maybe they have new food that we don't have in this universe. Who knows? In our 3rd spot, we have the workday. This story was posted 4 years ago on Reddit, but sadly the account is now deleted, so I can't give them credit. So according to this post, it was September 11th, 2015, and the guy was headed to his job of 5 years. But when he got there, he said that something fell off. In fact, he saw employees that he had never even seen before. He ended up striking a conversation with one of them and mentioned how it was September 11th and how it was sad what happened on that day. But the employee had no clue what he was talking about. The guy explained it, but the employee was all like, "What attacks? That never happened." Then on his way home, he was listening to the radio and it mentioned Howard Dean as president. Obviously, this freaked the guy out, so as soon as he got home, he decided to just lay down and relax. He ended up falling asleep, and when he woke up, he was back in his normal universe. Honestly, I think it would be super scary to get trapped in a universe that isn't yours. Like, you'd be telling stories and people would be like, "What are you talking about, you little crazy person?" Like, no one would believe you. You'd be by yourself. Sad. Coming in at number 2, we have the assignment. 3Acid Nirvana on Reddit shared his experience about traveling to another universe, where something freaky happened to him at school. So in one of his courses, his teacher gave the class a massive research assignment. For the assignment, they had to use resources from a list the teacher supplied them with. So he ended up using this one book in the library to help him write the paper. About a week before the paper was due, he needed to go cite something from the book, but he already returned it to the library. So he went to the library and asked to get the book. Not only did the library not carry the book, but there was no such book ever written. Which is freaky, because how could he write a whole paper on a topic that he didn't know without any sources? So he must have traveled to a different universe, one where that book doesn't exist. And in our number 1 spot, we have Denny's. Ever wonder what food is like in an alternate universe? Well, they still got Denny's, I can tell you that. But it goes by another name there, Penny's. Yep. Reddit user is_emo posted a story about the time he ended up going to a place called Penny's, which was identical to Denny's. From the building to the food and the menu, everything was the same. Except it was called Penny's. He even asked his parents about it since he had been to that restaurant in that same location multiple times, but they said it has always been called Penny's. A couple weeks later, when passing by the restaurant, he noticed the sign "Turn back to Denny's." He asked his parents again and they said they have never even heard about Penny's. What's going on? Like, that would drive me insane. Does this happen to other restaurants too in other dimensions? Like, is Chick-fil-A called Flick-Chile? Thought-provoking question. Starting off this countdown, we have the dreams. Posted by the user Lost Within Myself, they believe that when they sleep, they travel to a parallel universe. To save the confusion, she calls them Universe A and Universe B, Universe B being the parallel universe. So in Universe A, our current universe, she is a 30-year-old female with dark brown hair and green eyes. She was adopted when she was little and is an only child. She's been married for 7 years and she has a little baby boy. But in Universe B, a lot of things are different. For starters, she has purple dyed hair instead of brown hair, she was never adopted, and she is the youngest of 5 children. She has a different husband and they have no children. Freaky, right? But keep in mind, she only goes to Universe B when she's sleeping. You could say maybe she just has wild dreams. But one time in Universe B, she was smacked across the face by her husband. And when she woke up in Universe A, she had a throbbing red mark across her face. Moving on at number 9, we have the lost friend. Posted on Reddit by Gotta Yeet, she is part of a friend group of 5. But recently, one of the friends in the group felt like someone was missing. She felt like they were always a friend group of 6. But she can't figure out who it is that's missing. So it's believed that that friend switched universes and is now in one where she has a group of 5 friends instead of 6. In our 8th spot, we have the different dog. So each universe is slightly different. Some buildings might disappear, maybe you live on a different street, or you're taller, or people around you behave a bit differently. Well, for the user Mr. Stuffed Baconator, he is now living in a universe where his uncle's dog is completely different. So a couple of years ago, he went back to Brazil to visit his uncle's dog for the first time. The dog's name is Sebastian and he is a white Samoyed. Then just last year, he went back to Brazil and his uncle's dog is now a huge Labrador. Still named Sebastian though, just a completely different breed. He asked his aunt and uncle what happened to their old dog, but obviously they had no clue what they were talking about. That was the only dog they ever had. In our 7th spot, we have the swap. This next Reddit user keeps switching between universes. He notices that every day something changes. For example, items in his room keep disappearing, his shower head turned from gray to black, and street signs keep changing around him. One day the street sign will be brand new. The next day it will be rusty, covered in vines. This has led him to believe that every day he wakes up in a new universe, one that is slightly different. Honestly, that would drive me insane. But hey, if I ever lose an object, I now know it's because I'm in a different universe, one where I never owned that object to begin with. Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the new items. Reddit user Blood of Loki shared a story about the time he was recovering in the hospital after a near-death experience. When he was finally well enough to go home, the hospital gave him the items he had come to the hospital with. These items were a green coat and a hat, but he has no memory of owning these items in the first place. But inside of the jacket was his personal items, so it's not like the hospital just gave him the wrong stuff. So he believes that sometime during his hospital stay, he switched to a different universe, one where he entered the hospital with that coat and hat. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the changes. Like I mentioned before, it would drive me insane if I woke up and things around me just changed. Well, this is what happened to the Reddit user Derizzle. So one night he went to bed on his white and black bed sheets, but when he woke up the next morning, his sheets were black and red. He also found that his laptop was covered in stickers, although he always thought putting stickers on electronics was stupid since it ruins the look of them. But there he was, different sheets and a different laptop. He asked his mom about the sheets, seeing if she somehow changed them, but she had no clue what he was talking about. Also, the night before, he got into a fight with his family and he woke up expecting that they would still be mad at him. But they weren't at all. It's like the fight never happened. So he believes that overnight he traveled to another universe, meaning that his other self got sent to the universe where his family is mad at him. Like, imagine waking up and not knowing why everyone is upset with you. That would just add more fuel to the fire. Like, the parents would be like, "Oh, stop pretending like you don't know." Yikes, I bet that was a rough morning for that version of himself. In our 4th spot, we have the wives. This next story is pretty eerie, but also really cool. So posted by the Reddit user AJKnox09, he shared the time he swapped places with his other self. So first, it's important to note that his wife-to-be passed away when he was 20. Down the line, he got married to another woman who he's been with for 20 years, and they have 2 daughters together. So one day they were all at a restaurant when all of a sudden he became very dizzy. He even grabbed the table to brace himself. When he turned to look at his wife, he saw that it wasn't his current wife. No, in her place was his 20-year-old wife-to-be and their daughter, who looked just like her. Then he was overcome with a dizzy sensation again, and when it stopped, he was back with his current wife. Which means that in another reality, his wife-to-be never passed away, and they went on to have a life together. Which also means he's technically married to 2 different women at the same time. Like, is that considered cheating if your other self has a different partner? In our third spot, we have Nair. Reddit user Ganj_316 claims that he is from a parallel universe where Earth is called Nair. Yep, he said that back on Nair, people started disappearing all over the world without a trace. Then one day he did too, and he showed up on Earth. He then reached out over Reddit to see if anyone else on there was from Nair as well. Apparently, a lot of things are different back on Nair. His planet is smaller, they have different countries, and they don't eat animals. Now he just wants to find a way to get back home. In our second spot, we have the drowning. Reddit user Lunatic McGee remembers the time where he almost drowned while going on a hike with his family. So while on the hike, there was a stream with a very powerful current. He decided to go near the water, but the rocks were wet, so he slipped into the water, and he was quickly pushed down the stream. Now, he remembers getting a hold of a rock and holding on for as long as he could before being dragged underwater. But then he also remembers his dad grabbing him and pulling him out of the water. So he remembers 2 different outcomes, meaning in one universe he drowned, and in the other he survived. And in our number 1 spot, we have the death. So there's a theory out there that we can live on infinitely. One of ourselves in one universe may die, but in another universe they live on. I'll explain that more in a second. So Reddit user Pino Bino posted this story 7 months ago. He said that he was driving to his office when all of a sudden a car came up behind him, and he was overcome with an intense feeling of fear, as if that car was going to hit him. Suddenly he felt an intense jolt through his body, but nothing even happened. The car didn't even hit him. He continued driving on, but he felt an excruciating pain up his neck, and he felt extremely dizzy and sick. On top of that, he could smell and taste gasoline. He even had visions of his family receiving news that he had died in a car crash. But that never happened. So he believes that in one universe, he died in a fatal car crash, but in this universe, the crash didn't even happen.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the death. This one comes from Reddit user DQ Supervisor, who said, "Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I can't find a better explanation. I was driving down County Road 28 just outside of my city. The road is basically a straight line for a bit, and I watched a car driving toward me in the opposite lane. It had blue headlights, and as it got closer, I saw that it was a black 2-door car. As the car got up to me, it hit me head on. I saw my windshield smash, I saw the car roll over mine, I smelled the smoke. I felt all of the pain. I closed my eyes, I think I died. Then I opened them again, and I was in the same spot as I was less than about a minute before this person hit me. I saw the same car with the same blue headlights. As it got closer, I saw it was a 2-door black car. I was freaking out because this car had just hit me a minute before, but it just kept on driving past and did not hit me. I 100% believe that that car did hit me. I will be finding another way to drive home from now on. Has anybody else experienced this? I do not have another explanation. All input and questions welcome. I must have got pushed from that universe into this one. Maybe not. I don't know anything about this stuff, but nothing else makes sense." At the number 9 spot now, we have the passengers. This one came from Mark of Shame on Reddit. For some reason, this one felt really real to me. They said, "Driving home on a storm day, day, I see that a side road up to the local golf course is blocked off by flashing barricades. I also spy a Mercedes parked past the barricade with its hazards on. I stop and walk up to the car to see if they need help. I'm an EMT. I shine my light into the back seat to see a man slumped over, apparently asleep. Thinking I've got a few drunks, I move up to the driver window and rap on the glass and shine my light in. The driver is sitting bolt upright, unmoving, staring straight ahead. My window rapping or light doesn't cause him to blink, flinch or move. I look over and the passenger is slumped forward onto the dash. This begins to creep me out. I call down to the sheriff's station and request a code 2 unit up to my location to help me check them out because the doors are locked. While on the phone, I walk back to the truck to get my go bag. As I'm on the phone with dispatch, she asked me to get a license number for the car just as a PG&E cherry picker truck comes rumbling down from up the closed road. I move to go around the truck to get the plate number and the car is gone. I talked to the driver of the truck and he said there was an 80-foot tree down across the road and that he didn't think it to be open for at least a day or so. So the question is, where the hell did the car go? Tree up one way, barricades down the other. It's kept me a bit unsettled when stopping at accidents and hazards ever since then. Coming at number 8 now, we have changing faces. Reddit user HiAerie1 commented in a parallel universe thread saying that for a single day his parents' faces swapped. People obviously asked for more details. He said, I woke up in the morning and at first I didn't realize anything was weird because it was like 6 AM and I was still half asleep. But after showering for school and waking up a bit, I noticed that there was something weird about my mom. Then I realized it wasn't my mom, it was my dad, but he had my mom's face. I was gonna say something, but then my little brother got up and was like, good morning dad, like everything was normal. Then, before I had time to process everything, I had to leave for school. Everything was fine at school and I almost forgot all about it. But when I got home, I saw my dad again, still with my mom's face. Then my mom walks in and starts talking to him, and she has his face. At this point, I am just dumbfounded. I have no idea what's going on. So I just sit down and start doing my homework. And when my little brothers get back from school, they just act like nothing is wrong. So I just decided to go with it and not say anything at all. I mean, I didn't want them to think I was going crazy or anything. I woke up the next morning and everything is just back to normal, but I still have dreams about it sometimes. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the garden. This is a strange one that comes from Stefan1403, whose story involves 3 generations of his family. He said, it was summer and my grandfather, grandmother, mom and I were working in the garden. It's pretty big and there's a lot of grass to be mowed and stuff like that. After all the work, my mom would always ask me to go and get some soda because everyone was thirsty from working. It was in the evening, but still pretty warm. After everyone had their soda, my mom asked me to put it in the back of the fridge, which was in the basement. Used as a living area, only a small part of it is really storage. So I go to the basement, and please note, the room with the fridge is like 20 or 30 seconds from the exit, and you have to pass 2 doors with those flappy anti-fly curtains. I put the soda in the fridge, close the fridge, and walk out. Seems normal, right? Except I had to do this 3 times. The soda kept reappearing whenever I put it in the fridge and turned my back on it. Everyone was outside and there was only 1 bottle of soda in the whole room. To this day, I am still confused over what exactly happened. There have probably been more moments like this in my life, but this is the one that I remember the most. At the number 6 spot now, guys, we have crossed wires. This one involves answering machines, hopefully. Some of you guys aren't too young to even know what they are. The story comes from Reddit user Kill All Extremists. They said, this happened about 15 years ago. I called my friend up and he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. I said, hey, it's me. Sorry I missed you. Call you later. Bye. And then I hung up and left the house. I made no other calls. Later that day, he called back and he says, wow, that was quite a message you left. Who was that girl you were talking to? I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't talking to any girl. Well, as it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I actually had to go over to his house and listen to this message a few times for myself. After my initial message that I did leave, as I already quoted, there was a slight pause and it continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with a girl whose voice I didn't recognize. You could compare it to the message I know I did leave, and the two voices were indistinguishable. Not just the voice, but talking mannerisms. It was my voice. Also, references to my occupation and activities were the same. Basically, in this conversation I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on a car first, which totally correlated to me. Then the message just stopped. It was recorded on one of those digital answering machines that recorded the message to a chip, so there was no tape I could have taken and had analysed, unfortunately. Also, neither I nor my friend had party lines, so that's not an explanation. It was very freaky and I just can't explain it. Moving on to the number 5 spot now, we have the closet. To get to Narnia, you have to go through the wardrobe. Everyone knows that. Do they also lead to other parallel worlds though? Reddit user Meanest Flower said, "In my parents' bedroom was this really large master closet. It was technically just one closet, but it had 2 doors going into it. Between the 2 doors was a high shelf and a hanging rod for clothes, so it functioned like 2 separate walk-in closets, but you could walk from one to the other by ducking under any clothes hung in the middle. One night, she was in her side of the closet and she saw through the gap between the shelf and the clothes rod my dad walk into his side of the closet. She heard the metal coat hanger sliding as he looked for something to wear and saw the clothes in the middle sway as they were brushed from side to side. From her side of the closet, she started talking to him about something random. Then she heard the bathroom door open. She poked her head out of the closet to see my dad clearly just emerging from the shower. He walked to look into his side of the closet and nothing. And up until the moment she poked her head out to look at the bathroom door, she would swear to you she could still see my dad in that closet." Next up at number 4 now, we have the money. This one comes from Reddit user ShadowJack00. The story is actually from a friend of theirs. They said, "A friend of mine from Toronto was in a bar in New York on a business trip. As he paid for drinks and food a few times during the night, he noticed a woman watching him intently. After a while she came over and struck up a conversation with him. Eventually she commented that she noticed he had coloured money in his wallet. She seemed, as he put it, eager to the point of being afraid to mention it. He told her yes, he was Canadian and he had some Canadian money in his wallet. She demanded he show her, and so he did. She was apparently very disappointed and started to cry a bit, but refused to talk about it any further. Feeling bad, he tried to cheer her up and the two of them got a bit hammered together. He admitted that his goal was to not spend the night alone, but he did anyway. At one point, he asked her why she wanted to see his Canadian money, and after a lot of coaxing and more drinks, she told him. She said that up until a few months before, US money had always been different colours. Ones were green, 10s were blue, and 100s were brown. She couldn't remember the other colours, she told him. She said the colours were not bright like Canadian money, but were sort of a set of dark tints. She said the brown 100s were called bricks because the brown tint they had was similar to a brick. Then she said one day they were all green, and she was the only one who seemed to remember them being different colours. My friend pressed her, and she said there were other differences too, not just money that she noticed. Popular TV programs were different or had the wrong actors in the lead roles. There was more, but my friend couldn't remember what else she said. After a while, she just started crying, saying she finally thought she had found someone who would convince her she wasn't going crazy, and he turned out to be a Canadian instead. Shortly after, she left, and that was the end of that. Moving on to number 3 now, guys, we have Quantum Thief. Now that has to be possibly the coolest name I've ever given to a story on this channel. I bet that will be a movie title one day. Anyway, this one comes from Reddit user Naimaz, who said, "Ever since I was a kid, I have what I call doubling occasionally happen around me. I put something in a pocket, then later find it in another pocket, as well as the original in the original pocket that I put it in. And yes, it has happened to money before. The most standout example was when I was a teen at camp. All the leaders had engraved plastic name tags, and we were issued only one. I used to keep moving mine between my hat and my shirt. At the end of camp, I just crammed all my stuff in a duffel bag and headed home. Later, when I unpacked, the first thing I do is to pull out my hat with the tag on it. Okay, so that's where I had it last, I thought. And of course, a minute later, I pull out a shirt with the same name tag pinned to it. I also experienced a similar phenomenon when I was a kid. For a few years it happened on a daily basis, but haven't seen it in a long time now. Someone would place something in their pocket or backpack, but when they went to grab it later it would be missing. I would then reach into my backpack or pocket and pull the item out. I initially got accused a lot of being a thief, but when it happened repeatedly, when I hadn't even been within 20 feet of the victim, my friends and classmates stopped doing so and just kind of accepted that that would always happen around me. Next up at number 2 now, we have pancakes. This is a very recent one posted to Reddit by user Julesmer, who said, when I was around 7 or 8, I distinctly remember going to a restaurant and getting a plate full of fruit and then heading back to my hotel and went to the hot tub. My sister Alex and I were talking about the activities we had done that day, and before we knew it, we headed back to our room. Our parents were at the casino and had left us pancakes and a note saying they'd be back in a few hours. We went to bed and had this dream that there was a bunch of lights with my sister's voice in the background. When I had awoken, me and my sister were in a cabin in a completely different state. I went to wake up my sister and I told her about my dream. It turns out we both had the same one, but instead of me hearing her voice, she heard mine. We both had no clue what to do, so we walked around. There had been a hot tub near our cabin and the same lady working at the other restaurant. We had talked about going to the fruit bar with our parents and had asked them if we drove to a different place while we were sleeping, but they just gave us a strange look and asked us what we were talking about. To this day, me and my sister still talk about what happened that night and think of new theories to explain what happened to us. And finally at number 1 now, we have Janet's dead. It would be pretty terrifying if someone your family thought was dead just walked into your home. It would be even more terrifying though if you were the only one who realized it. This Reddit user said, last night I was on the phone with my mom and she told me to come over for dinner. Everything was going great. Then suddenly she comes out with, Janet is going to be there. I was like, very funny mom, great one. But in my head I was thinking, that's really not funny. Why would you say something like that? Then my mom keeps going on with this. You haven't seen her in forever. It'll be nice. Janet died last year though. I have a vivid memory of it. I did not attend the funeral, but I remember everyone talking about it and making a scene of it because she died young. She died of cancer, and I remember her husband coming to visit and being very depressed. I never saw her body or anything, but I am 1000% certain this woman is dead, and I remember many family members talking about it. I never saw the body or visited her grave, and I wasn't that close with her, so I never had much grief over it. But I have vivid memories of her dying and my relatives being depressed over it. I was really weirded out by my mom on the phone, and finally I came out and said, Janet's dead, what are you talking about? And my mom just kept talking like it was ridiculous or like I was kidding around. She jokingly said, she's back, or something like that. I asked my dad later on and he looked at me like I was insane. I also can't find the obituary online, but I never looked for it to begin with.